归镇阳人民政府今天胜利了。
为建设富强、民主、文明、和谐、美丽的社会主义现代化强国努力奋斗。
In 1925, so concerned was he about China's dire situation that the patriotic poet Wen Duo was unable to sleep at night. He was moved to write the Song of the Seven Suns about the plight of 7 specific places in China, including Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. Over 70 years later, 20 of his descendants gathered at his old home in Beijing. They were celebrating the 100th anniversary of the poet's birth, which fell just ahead of Macau's return to the motherland. The couplets on the wall read, "In the end, ripples stir the stagnant water, and we enter the new century with heads held high." On his 100th birthday, red candles filled the room as we drink to the spirit of heroism. Macau is coming home. In the morning of July the 1st, 1997, within hours of Hong Kong's handover, Charles, Prince of Wales, and Chris Patten, the last governor of Hong Kong, boarded the Royal Yacht Britannia and departed the city. The ship had been anchored at the location where the first governor of Hong Kong, Henry Pottinger, had landed 154 years before. History has not forgotten that this was where over a century of humiliation for China began. In June 1840, the United Kingdom invaded China. Subsequently, under the Treaty of Nanking, signed on August the 29th, 1842, the island of Hong Kong was ceded to the British Crown. In 1860, following the Second Opium War, China was forced to sign the Convention of Peking, ceding Kowloon to the UK. In 1898, the Qing government was obliged to sign the Convention for the Extension of Hong Kong Territory, under which Kowloon and nearly 200 nearby islands were leased to the UK. These islands became known as the New Territories. In 1941, Japan invaded Hong Kong and occupied it for 3 years and 8 months. In February 1942, guerrillas led by the Communist Party of China entered the territory and established the Hong Kong Kowloon Independent Brigade. The ferocity of their resistance to the occupying Japanese was an inspiration to the Hong Kong people. With its return to British rule following Japan's defeat, Hong Kong became a hotbed of rivalry among various political forces. In October 1949, the PLA liberated the city of Guangzhou, but the advance stopped at the Shenzhen River, which separates Shenzhen from Hong Kong. The central government, although it didn't recognize the unequal treaties forced on China by the imperialist powers, decided to adopt a far-sighted strategy. In other words, it would plan for the long term and make the best of the situation. The song Pearl of the East describes both how Hong Kong was thriving and also how its people longed for the motherland. In fact, the city was dependent on the mainland's support. In 1962, in a move overseen in person by Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai, the mainland opened 3 express train services to Hong Kong, numbers 751, 753, and 755. They carried fresh seafood and meat to the city through Shenzhen and became Hong Kong's lifeline. The trains symbolized the close ties of blood between the people of the mainland, Hong Kong, and Macau. Following the launch of the reform and opening up, formal discussions began about reunifying China. During a meeting with some well-known personalities from Hong Kong and Taiwan in August 1981, Deng Xiaoping explained the central government's policy. Taiwan won't adopt socialism. Its social system won't change. Later, he repeatedly made it clear that while respecting the reality of the situation in Taiwan and Hong Kong, China's strategic vision was to peacefully reunify all of China. The one country, two systems principle represented a path towards that end. Its wisdom would ultimately be proven through the peaceful return of Hong Kong and Macau. In December 1981, the CPC Central Committee decided that Hong Kong should be returned on July 1, 1997. In September 1982, Margaret Thatcher, the recently appointed UK Prime Minister, visited China for talks on the Hong Kong issue. During her meeting with Deng Xiaoping, the Iron Lady insisted that the 3 unequal treaties the United Kingdom had signed with the Qing government should be upheld. She even tried to argue that British control over Hong Kong should be maintained in the form of administrative rather than sovereign authority.
谈判的题目就是一个归属问题，一国我们根本谈不拢，中国将考虑接受香港的时间和方式。
Deng Xiaoping was absolutely clear about China's standpoint and resolve. He swept aside Thatcher's illusion that the UK could retain any of the unequal treaties. After 22 rounds of talks, on December 19, 1984, China and the UK signed the Sino-British Joint Declaration. It confirmed that sovereignty over Hong Kong would be restored to the PRC on July 1, 1997. During the Spring Festival Gala that year, the song My Chinese Heart by Jiang Mingmin captured the mood of people across China. Once the joint declaration had been signed, Deng Xiaoping became concerned about securing a peaceful transition and guaranteeing Hong Kong's long-term prosperity. Referring to the territory, he said, "Don't believe that there are no destructive forces. If some disturbance happens, the central government will intervene." He repeatedly emphasized the need for stability in Hong Kong. It must remain stable during the transition, he said, and when sovereignty has been restored to China and the Hong Kong people are in power. This is a key issue. Never believe that everything will be great just because all Hong Kong affairs are managed by Hong Kong people and that the central government needn't intervene. This is unrealistic. With these words, Deng Xiaoping dispelled many of the misgivings and misunderstandings concerning the return of Hong Kong. On April the 4th, 1990, the third session of the 7th National People's Congress passed the basic law of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the PRC. It would serve as a basic legal guarantee for the stability and future prosperity of Hong Kong after its return. The handover ceremony was held on the evening of June the 30th, 1997, and lasted until the early hours of July the 1st. The first 509 officers and soldiers of the PLA Hong Kong garrison entered the territory during the night of June the 30th. They set up their bases at Shek Kong Airfield on Stonecutters Island, at the Prince of Wales Barracks, and in Stanley. That afternoon, heavy rain had been falling on Hong Kong. It was as if the city was washing away more than 150 years of humiliation and preparing for its rebirth. Later that night, the world's eyes were fixed on the bright lights of the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center. The great moment was approaching. At 14 minutes to midnight, the representatives of the UK and the PRC made their entrance. Less than a kilometre away, outside the British Army headquarters at the Prince of Wales Barracks, the PLA Hong Kong garrison was relieving the British force. At 1 minute to midnight, the flags of the UK and Hong Kong were lowered. A century and a half of colonial rule in Hong Kong was over. As the clock ticked past midnight and July the 1st dawned, the Chinese national anthem played, and the flags of the PRC and the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region slowly began to rise.
This is China民主的盛世，也是世界和平与正义事业的胜利。
As the clock struck midnight, police officer Chai Jiahui, who was on duty outside the governor's office, took out a brand new cap badge and removed the old one bearing the royal crown. He no longer belonged to the Royal Hong Kong Police. Now he was a member of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region Police Force. Hong Kong had returned home. After more than 150 years, the humiliation had been washed away, and Hong Kong and China were reunited. After its return, Hong Kong prospered. Its people now enjoyed voting and other democratic rights. The contrast with British rule was stark when a succession of 28 governors had been appointed without the local people, who were considered second-class citizens, having any say. Under one country, two systems, Hong Kong was governed by Hong Kong people and enjoyed a high level of autonomy. Across the Pearl River Delta from Hong Kong lies Macau, occupied by Portugal in the 16th century. Simultaneously with the process of ensuring Hong Kong's return, talks were held on the return of Macau. When negotiations between the governments of China and Portugal began in 1986, Deng Xiaoping made it clear that the issue of Macau must be resolved in this century. We cannot let colonialism drag its tail into the next century. The Sino-Portugal Joint Declaration, signed on April 13, 1987, stated that the Chinese government would resume sovereignty over Macau on December 20, 1999. In March 1993, the first session of the 8th National People's Congress passed the Basic Law of the Macau Special Administrative Region of the PRC.
降旗升旗仪式现在开始，请全体起立。
On December 19, 1999, as midnight approached, the eyes of the world were fixed on the Macau Cultural Center, where the handover ceremony was being held. Once more, China was the center of international attention. On the eve of the new century, Macau was also returning home. The former Portuguese colony entered a new period of development. Even amid all the rejoicing, few people could have imagined the scale of the transformation this quiet community would undergo in just a few years. Having suffered negative economic growth, high unemployment, and poor public security in the 4 years immediately prior to its return, Macau started to flourish and is today one of the world's most prosperous regions. The smooth return of Hong Kong and Macau were major milestones in the great cause of China's reunification. Under one country, two systems, the central government permitted a high degree of local autonomy. This approach was underpinned by the Chinese Constitution and the Basic Laws. Just 3 months after the handover of Hong Kong, Asia was plunged into a financial crisis. The Hang Seng Index and the Hong Kong dollar plummeted, and public confidence fell. The SAR authorities, as they fought back against the international speculators, soon found support from the central government. With combined foreign currency reserves of over $210 billion, the biggest in the world, their defense position was formidable. Backed by the mainland, Hong Kong survived the financial storm. The central government wholeheartedly supported economic development and the improvement of living standards in Hong Kong and Macau. It encouraged exchange and cooperation between them and the mainland in every field, and also supported their external activities. The fresh opportunities it offered inspired them with a sense of renewed vitality. The central government adopted a number of measures designed to boost economic development in Hong Kong and Macau. In 2003, it signed closer economic partnership agreements with them. These CPAs served to tighten the economic ties between the two regions and the mainland. Over the next few years, a succession of supplemental agreements helped foster stronger relations among the three markets. The CPAs opened up massive opportunities for Hong Kong and Macau, encouraged diversified development there, and drew them closer to the mainland. At the 28th session of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee, the Historic Center of Macau was confirmed as China's only World Heritage Site nomination for the following year, 2005. Several submissions from the mainland had been withdrawn in order to increase Macau's chances of success. In the event, it took the committee just 9 minutes to unanimously pass the nomination, making Macau's Historic Center the 31st World Heritage Site in China. In 2018, the 55-kilometer-long Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge was opened. Like a ribbon drifting over the sea, it links 11 cities in the Greater Bay Area. On February the 18th, 2019, the outline development plan for the Guangdong-Hong Kong-Macau Greater Bay Area was published. The area, which includes Hong Kong, Macau, and 9 other cities on the Pearl River Delta, is one of the most open and economically vibrant parts of China. Over the past 20 years, international rating agencies have repeatedly identified Hong Kong as one of the world's most competitive economic regions. Since its return, Macau's growth has been remarkable. Its per capita GDP increased from $16,000 to $83,000 in 2018, one of the highest in the world. Another area of major improvement has been public security.
恭请中华人民共和国主席习近平先生致辞。
回顾香港特别行政区的成长历程，我们可以自豪地说，20年来，香港依托祖国，面向世界，熠熠创新，不断塑造自己的现代化风貌。一国两制在香港的实践取得了举世公认的成功。
It has been the consistent stance of the Chinese government that, on the issue of Hong Kong, people must establish an accurate understanding of the relationship between the principles of one country and 2 systems, and persist in maintaining the former. Any threat to the sovereignty of China and any challenge to the authority of the central government or the basic law crosses a red line and will not be tolerated. The strong support from the central government and the mainland has added impetus to the economic development of Hong Kong and Macau. They have had wider scope to grow, and their prospects are now brighter. The future looks truly promising. Resolving the Taiwan issue and realizing the complete reunification of the motherland is the aspiration shared by all the sons and daughters of China. It is a fundamental concern of the Chinese nation. In the 1950s, Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, and other leading figures in the CPC proposed one guiding principle and 4 items as a means for peacefully resolving the Taiwan issue. The document stated that if Taiwan returned to China, it could maintain its existing social system. Reunifying the motherland has always been one of the CPC's most important historical tasks. On January the 1st, 1979, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress issued the Message to Compatriots in Taiwan. The document called on the people of the island and the mainland to work together to achieve peaceful reunification. It was in the early 1980s that Deng Xiaoping had put forward the concept of one country, 2 systems. When it was later applied in Hong Kong and Macau following their return, it opened up a new path for China's reunification. After the authorities in Taiwan started allowing a limited number of family visits, cultural and economic exchanges rapidly gained momentum. In November 1987, the first group of Taiwan compatriots entered the mainland via Hong Kong to see relatives they'd been separated from for 38 years. The visit marked a new stage in cross-strait relations. In late 1991, China established the Association for Relations Across the Taiwan Straits. In March the following year, the association began talks with Taiwan's Straits Exchange Foundation. Eventually, the 1992 Consensus, also known as the One China Consensus, was signed. In April 1993 in Singapore, chairman of the Association for Relations Across the Taiwan Straits, Wang Daohan, and his Straits Exchange Foundation counterpart, Ku Chen-fu, met for what became known as the Wang-Ku Summit. It was the first meeting between high-level representatives from the two sides of the straits for many years. It produced numerous agreements. Subsequently, in March 1994, the law of the People's Republic of China on the protection of investment by compatriots from Taiwan was adopted. With a view to further advancing cross-straits relations, just before Chinese New Year 1995, Jiang Zemin gave a speech. In Continue to Promote the Reunification of the Motherland, he made 8 proposals for developing cross-straits relations and promoting the peaceful reunification of China. His speech received considerable attention and a positive reaction, both in China and abroad. However, Taiwan leader Lee Teng-hui turned his back on the One China principle. Instead, he actively pursued a Two Chinas policy. The central government responded resolutely by launching an anti-secessionist struggle. In the new century, the CPC Central Committee has given higher priority to containing and countering Taiwan independence movements. On March 4, 2005, President Hu Jintao put forward 4 principles for improving cross-straits relations. They were that One China was an unshakable stance, that China would not give up on peaceful reunification, that the policy of pinning hope on the people of Taiwan would not change, and that there could be no concessions in opposing independence movements. The anti-secession law was passed during the 3rd session of the 10th National People's Congress. For the first time, it referred to 3 situations in which the mainland might use non-peaceful measures to resolve a crossing of red lines in the Taiwan issue. The law enshrined the consistent position of the party and the government that peaceful reunification should be pursued with utmost sincerity and effort. It also reflected their steadfast determination to guarantee the country's unity and its territorial integrity. The hard work of the compatriots on both sides of the straits frustrated the independence movement led by Chen Shui-bian. The stance adopted by the CPC Central Committee ensured that exchanges could take place between political parties on the two sides of the straits. In spring 2005, CPC General Secretary Hu Jintao and Kuomintang Chairman Lien Chan met for official talks in Beijing. This was the first meeting between the leaders of the two parties since the Chongqing negotiations 60 years earlier. Their meeting confirmed that adherence to the 1992 Consensus and opposition to any independence movement formed the basis for exchanges between the two parties. May 2008 saw a major turning point in cross-straits relations. China's NPC and CPPCC sessions that year produced a series of important initiatives. The authorities on the two sides of the straits agreed to improve communication. 3 links were opened, namely direct flights, shipping, and posts. This cleared the way for communication exchange and cooperation on a large scale between compatriots on the two sides of the straits. The mainland also introduced several policies aimed at encouraging cooperation to the benefit of the compatriots in Taiwan. In the afternoon of November the 7th, 2015, Xi Jinping met Taiwan leader Ma Ying-jeou in Singapore. The two exchanged views on how cross-straits relations could be advanced and peaceful development achieved. They established a precedent for direct communication between the leaders of the two sides. The meeting was hailed as a milestone in the development of cross-straits relations.
两岸同胞要共谋和平、共护和平、共享和平。两岸同胞血脉相连，亲望亲好。中国人要帮中国人。我们对台湾同胞一视同仁，将继续率先同台湾同胞分享大陆发展机遇，为台湾同胞、台湾企业提供同等待遇，让大家有更多获得感。
No person or authority can alter the historical and legal fact that Taiwan and the mainland are part of the same China. Over the past 70 years, breakthroughs have been made in cross-straits relations that have resulted in historic changes. The motherland must and will be reunified. Those who take the dishonorable and hopeless course of attempting to stop the righteous advance of history are bound to fail. The current's smooth and the two shores wide. The wind is right, and hanging from my boat, a single sail. These words were written by the Tang Dynasty poet Wang Wan. Together, by standing shoulder to shoulder, the people on the two sides of the straits will contribute to the great cause of the reunification of China.